Well. Saturday, November 30th. It's 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I am Bob Harris. It's time for the weekly Ask Me Anything live stream. Before we get to that, joining me here Saturday at this very time. Heading into Lucky Week 13 seems extra exciting. Also, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. for my On the Hot Seat live streams. This past week, I had my friend Zach Kruger from Roto World on. He was great. You can go back and watch the replay of that. If you missed it this coming week, I'll have another great guest. Stay tuned for that. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all that kind of stuff that you do on YouTube. Like me, dislike me. Just do something. It's fine. Whatever you choose, I'm okay with. Hope everyone's having a great week. We've had games already. Hope you're not playing against Brock Bowers, but instead you're playing him. I see the questions are already lining up. Here's the thing with questions, man. I can't answer all the questions. It really bugs me that I can't answer all the questions, but I can't answer all the questions. So I'm not going to try. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to pick and choose. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to post my rankings, a link to my rankings here, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. We'll talk about some weather a little bit and other things like that. As we get into here, we'll start out with a little news. Hi, Andrea. I wanted to check on you. How's everyone doing in the snow? How are we holding up? Are we set for the what's going to happen up there, Andrea? Royal Slade in the chat. Hey, Royal Slade. So if I don't get your questions, I apologize in advance. I'm going to kind of use these and we're about this a little bit. What we're doing here. I think one of the things that doesn't make this live stream great is me just reading my rankings to you. I think you reading my rankings is way better. But using some of these questions to highlight some of the issues and how we go through what the process might be to make these decisions. And I'll also say, some things on the rankings as well. We'll get to that in a minute. I want to start out. There's some news breaking just now. I don't know if Scampers is in the house yet. He's probably broke it already. James Conner just signed a 2-year contract extension with the Arizona Football Cardinals. Boy, that's interesting. I mean, what does this do to Trey Benson? Well, not good things, I'm guessing, right? So for at least the dynasty value, right? So yeah, it's just an interesting move. James Conner's got a tough matchup this week. I'm not excited. Not excited about that. Not excited about that. But so we'll get through some injury stuff here. We'll talk a little bit about the ranking process. We'll talk about some newsy items. I'll answer some questions. But like this is the key. And Scampers isn't here. He's just not breaking news. But the whole idea of trying to do this is like two things. None of us are perfect in this rankings game, but we do a pretty good job. So I want to explain to you how that works and how we arrive at our rankings and how you can use them. But also, I think so many questions are not like, I want to start this guy or that guy. I mean, they're that question, but so many of them are like, am I crazy to do this? And mostly you're not. And I'm going to discuss why. But first, we're going to talk about a little bit of news not related to James Conner, which was great to see. This is the truth, right? It does kind of suck for Benson. Good morning, everybody. Happy to have everyone here. Vikings going to dominate. John Bonneville. So my fiance is a Vikings fan, so that's made me. I have a rooting interest now. I'm not a fan of teams. I'm a fan of games. Everyone trying to copy. Oh, so we got a lot of stuff. Right? We're putting together backfields. Like, look at Carolina. What are we going to see with Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks next year? The Lions, maybe in Arizona too. Very much. He is. And I wrote something a couple weeks ago. Like, this offense works best when he's working, right? And so that's why I'm worried against them. Oh, look at Rachel loves it. Well, hello to Rachel with Tusi Pop, the newest one of the newest staffers at footballguys.com. Welcome her aboard, everybody. We already did this once on Tuesday live stream, but we'll do it again here. Hey, Lester, good to see you. So we'll run through some news, and thanks everyone for coming. Again, I appreciate you. If you don't know who I am, I'm Bob Harris. I've been doing this many thousands of years, since 1993. I've been doing this. I've made my sole living doing this, which means in another 10 years, I'll break even. I've been around a while. I was the first ever fantasy sports writer of the year by the FSWA in 2004. I'm in the Hall of Fame of that organization. I do a radio show. You can listen to it Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight, Saturday night, tonight. You can listen from 8 to 11 on NFL radio and the Fantasy Channel. Marcus Grant will join us tonight. It'll be a great show. Mike Dempsey, me. Sunday, I do the pregame show with Jeff Mans. You can also watch the pregame show here, the Sit Start pregame, the lineup advice pregame show on the Football Guys Fantasy Football channel. It's fantastic. Yes, I did. And it is thousands. It seems like thousands for sure. And so you can catch my writing every week at Football Guys. The notebook is out every Thursday. The In and Out is out today. I'll talk a little bit about that too, and how I arrive at those decisions. Who I picked for In and Out last week was a disaster. I went 2-7. I do 9 picks every week. 2 players. I'm in and out at every position. I do an outlier every week. The idea is to be edgy and kind of game the rankings, game the projections, and sometimes I'm more successful than others. This week was a mess. Andrea, speaking of mess, it's front. So Andrea's up in Buffalo for people who don't know. So we got a game there Sunday night. It'll be very exciting. Hopefully, we'll talk about that. Let's get into the injuries and get that out of the way here before I keep forgetting and getting sidetracked by other things. By the way, daily update podcast every morning at 5:30 a.m. comes out. Mike Dempsey and myself run the news of the day, kind of get you up to speed. It's 10 minutes, quick hit, kind of just put things on your radar. Not everyone is out there steeping in the subject and working, closely and following along. So we kind of give you encapsulate what you need to watch today with that podcast. There's all kinds of other stuff. Football Guys, Cecil and Sig, Alfredo and Kluge, Jaggerman and Jeff Bell doing the dynasty stuff. So check it all out. Tons of articles and content. It'll be fantastic. So there we go. News stuff. Quarterback situations of interest. Brock Purdy. He's listed as questionable. It's Sunday Night Football, right? You better have a fallback plan. I don't know if anyone's going to be available from that Monday night game. I'm not eager to play Jameis Winston, right, against the Denver defense. Already playing Bo Nix if I have him over Brock Purdy. So I don't know what you're going to do other than get Brandon Allen as a backup in case something happens, because I know he's listed as questionable. He put in a full practice Friday. Kyle Shanahan told us that he's on track to play. Have you heard this before? Have we heard this before? Can you think back to week 1 when Christian McCaffrey was questionable, but good to go, ready to play? Said he was going to handle a big workload the Friday before the game. And then Monday night, they pulled the ball away from us, Lucy style, and Charlie Brown, all of us flying and falling on our back. So this, I'm not saying that's going to happen this week because I don't know that. And it does seem like it treaded in a good direction. He did get in a better practice, but there were, it's just been a dicey issue. So do you want to take a chance on that in horrible weather? I don't know. Andrew's playing Josh Allen in horrible weather. I'll talk about the weather too. I'm weather agnostic mostly. Football has been played in inclement conditions forever. It's a winter game. So I know we get, it's a hair, the weather. This might be bad enough weather that the hairs might be broader than I'm splitting. That is a correct assessment. A correct assessment. There you go. Let's go check that out if you get a chance there, Angela. Thank you. Ladies, hockey ladies, first game of the season. That's fantastic. So Trevor Lawrence is supposed to play as well against the Houston Texans, who just sacked Will Levis, 8 times last week? Well, Will Levis gets sacked 8 times a lot. Let's be fair. Let's be honest about this. But look, he's coming off. He's got a serious enough injury. He's cost him 2 games with a left shoulder injury, not his throwing shoulder. And there's a possibility he'll need surgery at some point. He thinks maybe he can get away without having it. It's a tough play. His return is good news for Brian Thomas Jr. I'm not as excited. Stingley's been playing better for Houston, but he did have a big game against them earlier this year. So those are your 2 quarterback issues. Running back, J.K. Dobbins is out. And by the way, I agree with this. It helps Ingram. I don't know, it's not bad news. Mac Jones was a disaster, right? It was horrible. Amari Cooper time. Look at that. That's a tough. I wouldn't, but you could, right? I wouldn't, but you could. How about that? Makes perfect sense. So J.K. Dobbins out. Gus Edwards is in. I know I've seen some questions in there. We'll talk about that a little bit. Hassan Haskins, Kamani Vidal also in the mix. Is this Vidal time? How many times do we have to address this? I'm not a big Vidal guy, but let's see. Tyjae Spears is going to return. The workload for Tony Pollard has been great without him, but I think the workload will remain great now. Who else? Austin Eckler is out this week with a concussion, but Brian Robinson is good to go in this game. Tank Bigsby returns to action this week. He's missed a couple games with ankle injury as well. So it'll be a split with him and he and Travis Etienne. So watch out for that. Wide receivers of interest. Devontae Smith is questionable. He's missed a couple games with the hamstring injury. We'll be watching this one closely. The Eagles are playing quite well. I don't know that they actually need to force anyone into the lineups, right? It's entirely possible. Entirely possible. That sounds about right to me. 3 snaps for Vida. Like we want Vida, I'll talk about this a little bit. How we root for, it's good to know what people root for, right? Or like Peter King once said, somebody asked Peter King, like, do reporters root for teams? No, he said they root for their stories. Fantasy managers are the same. We root for the players we've been touting, right? Like I still root for Anthony Richardson. Not going to stop. I was pushing him hard. I want him to do great. I want him to succeed. I want my narrative to play out. I mean, I realize what the reality is of this, but that doesn't, nothing's over. I've talked about this before on this live stream. Like I'm right and wrong are temporary conditions. They are not permanent conditions, right? As long as the player's still playing, there's still room to grow. A couple other guys. Cedric Tillman listed, no injury report out yet for them, but he has not practiced yet. He's in the concussion protocol. Josh Downs is out this week, and so is Ashton Dulin. So watch that. Alec Pierce is questionable. Could this be an AD Mitchell week if you're out there playing the DFS games? Maybe so. Jalen Coker, the great Jalen Coker, is out again. Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Dave Moore are the top 3 in that position. Keon Coleman in Buffalo is questionable. The Demario Douglas is questionable. Limited in practice all week. My guess is he'll go, but you'll want to watch that one. Check it out. Darnell Mooney and Drake London are off the injury report, so they're good to go. Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett, all those guys. Ridley, Metcalf, Lockett, all off the injury report, so that's good news there. Noah Brown off the injury report. Good news there. So Dalton Kincaid is out, tight end. Will Dissly off the injury report. Jatavian Sanders is out. Josh Oliver's out. Not a big deal. It's good news for TJ Hawkinson. And Younghoe Koo, the kicker for the Atlanta Falcons, is questionable. He was added the injury report. But he did work fully Friday, so seems likely he'll play. Anyway, there we have it. There's that. There's all that. This is probably a good point. And so we'll see. I have a feeling Coleman's going to be back. We were talking about this, Mike Dempsey and I, on the radio program last night. Like, who do we trust more, Keon Coleman or Amari Cooper? I trust Amari Cooper's a better player right now, right? He's just a better receiver. But I might trust Keon Coleman's connection with Josh Allen a little more. I'm still playing Amari Cooper, and we'll see how it plays out. I love this comment. This is great. Will Levis is looking different places than we are, and it's okay. We like what you're doing. Big plays are what he's all about. So I talked about the rankings. I'll post my rankings here before we're done. Let's see if it works. Here, let me try it and see if it goes. I don't know if that worked. I don't think that worked. I don't know if I can do it because I'm not a football guy. So, damn it. So you can cut and paste that probably, I'm guessing. Let me see. Let me see if it's showing up in the chat. It's not showing up in the chat. Oh, well. If you can see it in the YouTube chat, you'll find it. You can cut and paste those. So here's the thing about the rankings. So we do rankings every week. It starts with our projectors: Sigmund Bloom, Jason Wood, Justin Freeman, Moriel Tremblay, Bob Henry. They all do a fantastic job. And so all of our rankings are based on the starting point of their projections. Then we go in throughout the week and we adjust them to our own needs. And how I adjust mine, it's an ongoing process. Like even as I do this show, there will be things that strike me as I answer questions or I talk through a situation that I haven't looked at. Like I'm ranking 120 wide receivers, right? I'm not going to pretend I sit here and I belabor every decision in real time. I'm trusting the projectors a fair amount. But then when I discuss these things, I'll find situations where, yeah, I would probably do that. And it happens all the time. Well, I'm on the radio 2 hours every night. I'm adjusting my rankings constantly as I'm talking on the telephone to callers who are asking me the similar questions to what you're asking, right? And sometimes when you ask me questions, I'll say, oh, wow, that makes me think of something different, or I see things differently, or I talk about it in a way that makes me look at the matchup differently, even ones that I have adjusted. And I do a lot of tinkering. I tinker endlessly with my rankings, sometimes so much that I destroy them. So that's part of the process, right? But also one thing you want to notice when you look at the rankings, I look at the projected scores, right? And so like this is we have to put players in order, right? We do. I mean, that's how we figure out what we're doing. That's how we determine the players we're playing, and we base it on projections that include the matchups, historic performance, not just this year, but going back over time, but also this year with a heavy emphasis. So you look at a player. So let's say you get to quarterback 11 this week. CJ Stroud is quarterback 11. I like him this week, playing the hell out of him. I think he's going to outperform his projection. It's 18.37 points. He's he's near the tail end of the quarterback ones, right? At number 11. Well, number 18 is Matthew Stafford. He's 16 points, almost 17 points, 17.9 points, right? I mean, like that's not a huge difference. So you can see here when we're having these discussions about, who we like better. Well, I like that guy better, but how much better do I like him? Not a whole lot. It's a pretty narrow band, right? So when you're sitting here, you're asking me questions and I'm agonizing over a decision. We're talking about maybe a point difference. I know that's important to you and I trust that it is. But let's say you have a situation where you're asking me the question like, I want to play this guy or this guy, but also my opponent has this guy and I have these three guys, or I'm playing against this guy. Like, did you play against Brock Bowers? You might need to swing for the fence a little more, might make a different decision, right? So these are all things that come into play. So when I sit here and I tell you I don't want to read you my rankings, I don't want to read you my rankings because there's a lot that goes into it. And the rankings aren't the final arbiter of what my decision might be. Might be the circumstance you're in. It might be the conditions on the field. It might be many things that and the rankings are part of the decision, a big part of the decision for me, right? And we, like again, we have to have an order to a starting point to start the discussion, but it's not the end point. The end point is the end of the discussion where you sit here and you talk yourself through all the circumstances that make a player worthwhile or not worthwhile, or one that you choose one over the other. Part of it is your hunches. And I talk about this all the time and I won't belabor the point. Play your hunch. Don't play my hunch. I have hunches, all kinds of hunches, right? Crazy hunches. And maybe you do too. And maybe you just want to come here and say, hey, is this crazy to do this? And probably most cases it's not, because again, the band is so narrow. There's not a lot of difference between these guys. So here's like, I just see a comment here. Great example with Stroud. I do like Stroud. So if you go to my in and out column, which is not published yet, but CJ Stroud's the quarterback I'm in on. I think he'll outperform his projection this week. Why? Because he has historically. The Jaguars are terrible defense. He's averaged 25 points against them in his career. Earlier this year, he had one of his best games against him, like 23 points, right? So Nico Collins back. There's a lot going on there that I like. That's my hunch. That's how I feel. Also, there's a comment in here about Joe Burrow. I would not sit Burrow. I would not sit Burrow either. But in this week's in and out, he's my quarterback I'm out on. Am I all the way out? I don't know. If I have any of the, if I think how I wrote it was if I have CJ Stroud and a lot of nerve, right? Maybe I would start CJ Stroud over Joe Burrow. And there's reasons behind it. And I explained it in the in and out, but number one is the matchup. Nobody scores a ton of points against the Pittsburgh defense. The quarterback average, they've given up the fewest points to the position all year, an average of 11.92 per game. They've only given up one game, I believe, I don't think they've given up any games of 20 points this year, right? That's a big deal. So you're looking at all those situations. Burrow's, by the way, on the season, quarterback 3. He's been phenomenal. He's averaging 22 points a game. But no quarterback has scored 20 points against him. Dak Prescott had 18 points. That's the most in week 5. So 11.9 per game. They've held opposing quarterbacks to single-digit scoring in half of their games. Also, the temperature's low. So these are the kind of hairs playing. Like, I'm injury agnostic. Mostly, I don't worry about the cold or heat. But Joe Burrow said, hey, I've never thrown in this cold of weather and my wrist might be an issue. That's not me saying that. That's Joe Burrow saying that. I'm paying attention to Joe Burrow, right? So again, my expectation is not that he will not be a quarterback 1. My expectation is he's not going to finish with his projected 20.5 points. I don't think, right? Maybe he will because he has very good receivers. But that's how we kind of work through the decisions. So thank you for that, John Bonneville. Right. So again, if you're just coming in and you're going, why isn't he answering my damn question? Well, it's because I wouldn't have had the nervous. It's tough, right? So, so there are some situations where like there are certain players that are hot button players. Like Andrea has a question about Kyler Murray or Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels super high in the rankings and projections this week. I like him a lot. It's a good matchup. He hasn't been playing as great. I'm not comfortable with how high he is. I'm not comfortable playing Kyler Murray, though. I'm less comfortable playing Kyler Murray against Minnesota this week. I don't like James Conner much this week. Um, so that's like I want to say Jaden Daniels is like quarterback 3, maybe 4 in the rankings this week. Or let me look at the raw projections because I think that's like a lot of times when I'm talking about the rankings, I'll use my rankings to answer questions or talk about it. But I'll go to the raw projections to kind of give you an idea of what the staff feels. Because, like, again, they've been doing this. All these guys have been doing this many years, and they have a great track record. That's why it's my starting point. Probably everyone's starting point here. So, so I'm a little concerned about Daniels. It hasn't been great. I'm higher on Bo Nix, like who's averaging what 20 plus points a game for the last 8 games. Jaden Daniels is not. Jaden Daniels is still ranked on the season. He's faring well. But he's not like it hasn't been great in recent weeks, right? So I'm a little concerned about that. And we'll see how it plays out. But him over Kyler Murray is an easy call for me this week. Kyler Murray, I don't know who he is. I don't know if he knows who he is. And the matchup against Minnesota, it's a weird paradox with the Vikings. Receivers fare super well against them. They're like giving up, I want to say the second most fantasy points in the league. And to wide receivers, excuse me. I'll clarify there. But quarterbacks have a hell of a time against them, man. That Brian Flores defense is, confounds them. So it's for me, that's a tough run. And it's really hard to run against them. I'm out on James Conner this week, by the way. Not all the way out. Just don't know that he'll meet his projections. And that's the thing about the in and out. The in and out is not like me saying you can't play somebody or that you must play somebody. It's me projecting who I think has a chance of outperforming their projections and some that are underperforming their projections. Check it out. It's football guys. The one thing that I do trust, how confident are you? Here's a question. How confident are you in Marvin? Would you put him in over Thielen? I'm confident in him and his matchup. I'm less confident in Kyler Murray. That said, Thielen, Pollard, or Najee, I would probably be more comfortable with Pollard in this game. Right. So Pollard's been playing well, been getting the good volume. I know Tyjae Spears back. For the most part, Pollard's best games have been without Spears. I think maybe he's established himself, right? And it's not a totally unfavorable matchup. So I'm gonna play Pollard. Like, I'm not confident in Marvin Harrison any week. He's up and down, hit or miss. All right. When he hits, it's fantastic. When he doesn't, it's not. So I'm going to play Pollard, and I think that's a safe play. I do like Adam Thielen. I don't think he's quite there yet. Najee, I think it's a little easier to throw against Cincinnati than not. So let's see. I'll run up and get some questions, and we'll kind of spin those off into broader discussions. But I think that's the way to go. Again, if you see, can y'all see my comment in there, or does it not show up because I put a link in there? Because I'm not football guys. Maybe I'm going to have Joey come in and do this at some point. Because I'd like you to be able to go read my rankings. I just don't want to read them to you, right? Yes, he did. Talked about that at the top of the show. So watch your Trey Benson shares if you're just dialing in. It's like a $19 million over 2 years. It's not an insignificant deal. And again, Scamper said something that I totally agree with. So nobody sees the comment from me. So I think it thinks I'm spamming because I'm not the in control of the site. So I'll work on that because I do want you to be able to read my rankings, and there is a free link to that that you can use. So I'll work on that. I'll have that next week. I should have planned this out better. I like Trey Benson an awful lot too. This is not a good sign for him. It's not. I don't know that it's. I don't know that it's a horrible sign. Don't be in shambles, John Bonneville. I think it'll be okay. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm not sure what that means. Good morning. So yes, this is disturbing. I was hoping my rankings would go in there so you could read them. But again, I think the show's better if you're just dialing up. I'm going to get some questions and I'm going to kind of spin them off into broader conversations because I think that's more helpful to more people than me just answering one person's question and not answering all the questions and people go away. Damn it. Why didn't you answer my question? Oh, because I can't answer them. That's why. All right. So just some other items like I hope you were all playing Aiden O'Connell this what a mess. What do you think about Matt Eberflus? So uh, there's like I thought it was interesting. Justin Anderson put out some notes on this and basically said Eberflus in his like kind of responses to what happened at the end of the game that kind of like, oh, I don't know, we'd do anything different kind of thing. Like was more protecting Caleb Williams, who actually was the one who screwed up, and him taking not like wanting to put all the pressure on the young quarterback. I don't know, whatever it is, it cost him his job. We'll see if Thomas Brown can do better. I think it's pretty encouraging that Thomas Brown has shown a good connection with Caleb Williams. Although I would have been in his ear reminding him when to call a timeout in this case, Thomas Brown. But he has really great energy, and we'll see if he can't get something out of these Bears. They're not going to turn their whole season around, but it was a move that had to be made at this point, right? And then the end of the Raiders game, what a mess! What a mess. We'll see how long Antonio Pierce lasts as well. So we did have some questions here. So 2 of 4. Need 2 or 4 of these guys: Breece, Devonta Smith, Rachaad White, Brian Thomas Jr.'s. Worried about the so when you ask the question like this and you're worried about those things and you want to avoid them, totally understandable. So you're telling me the answer to this question, right? You would like to play Rachaad White and Brian Thomas Jr. I think I would play Brian Thomas Jr. over Devonta Smith right now. Would I play Rachaad White over Breece Hall? I probably would not, right? Like I'd wait this one out. So here's the good news on Breece Hall. He got into full practice Friday. I know it's a concern coming off a bye, didn't work, early in the week, and that got everyone's hackles up. Then he worked. There's a lot of teams that do this. I've been talking about this on the radio a little bit, and it's interesting how teams kind of act independent of who the coaching staff is. Like the Atlanta Falcons and Seattle Seahawks this year have proven to be the same. They have new coaching staffs in, but their approach with injuries has been the same. It's very normal in Atlanta and Seattle for a guy not to practice Wednesday, not to practice Thursday, get into full practice Friday, and come all the way off the injury report. No designation whatsoever, right? That's their norm. The Jets, they do a different thing. They'll go no practice Wednesday, a limited practice Thursday, a full practice Friday. They'll still use the questionable designations. A lot of teams do this. The Patriots do this. And so, like, there was a time, many of you young people might not remember this, they had probable designations, right? And so the goal here is to try and figure out who's on the probable side of questionable, right? Especially in the later games, like Brock Purdy. I think he's on the probable side of questionable. Anything could happen. I'm hoping he plays, and I'm hoping they have some success, but anything could happen. But the questionable designation opens up a lot of concerns. So that's the thing with Breece Hall. He did practice fully. It's an early kickoff for them against Seattle. I'd probably wait this one out. And if he goes, I get it. The Rachaad White, it's a great matchup against Carolina for everybody. So we're all trying to play all our Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're not all going to fare well. So I think, I'd probably prefer Breece Hall if he's playing to White, and I'd probably go Thomas. But a little bit of process behind that. And that's kind of going to be the goal of this conversation from here on out. Instead of answering every question, let's dig a little deeper and use it to make broader points that we can all benefit from. By golly, look at me go. It's almost like I was trying to be helpful or something. It's not my usual lane. What do I got here? Yes. Hall has a good matchup. The probable designation opened the door to a lot of shenanigans, right? Like, and that's the thing. So by the rule, the NFL, what the NFL encourages teams to do, if a player is limited in practice, there's a certain amount, right? Like the Baltimore Ravens will do this too. Limited full practice question, right? You go, but he had the full practice. I know, that seems like the norm. The Falcons did it with Koo too, by the way. He had a full practice Friday. They still listed him as questionable. They usually take guys off the injury report. So that makes me a little crazy. Like, I don't like to, like that. Like, if you don't play Hall and he puts up 30 points, if you don't play anyone, they put up 30 points, right? I mean, you'll never forgive yourself. Like, I sit here and kick myself because I didn't play, like a guy at the bottom of my bench. Oh, Demarcus Robinson had a huge game, but I had all these better options ahead of him. So I try not to do that. There's another thing. There's another thing. So if you play on Sleeper, you get notifications. You'll see on Tuesday, so and so goes from healthy to questionable. No, he didn't. Nobody's questionable until Friday, unless they play in the Thursday night game. Then it's Wednesday. Sunday games, nobody's questionable until Friday. They use that as a way to say, hey, somebody's not healthy. I wish they would come up with a better way, but and I get why they do it, but it causes all kinds of confusion because I'll get a call on the radio show. All right, see, this guy's questionable. No, he's not. Quit telling the world on national radio that somebody's questionable who's not questionable. I forgive you, Stampers. So, I mean, I know these things seem like minor distinctions, but it's irritating to have information out there that's not correct, right? Me, like, I know they're not practicing. I know they're limited, but like, let's look at DK Metcalf. He didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, and he was questionable. No, he wasn't questionable, nor was he questionable on Friday when the injury report come out. So I don't know. We haven't discussed. So, Andrea, if you could jump back in the chat and let everyone know what's going on with the weather. It's like I think the snow now is expected right up until 7 p.m. I don't know how bad it is. I don't know how bad it is. So, so if you could jump in there, I'd be interested to hear it again one more time. Um, John Bonneville, Jaden Reed ventures have nobody blamed but themselves. And he had to start him this week with Dubs out. I think that's true. But also, like Jaden Reed can be a hard play, right? When you have guys with better options. And what I mean by better options, they're more certain volume, right? So like why are we talking about players like Christian McCaffrey in the past or this year, coming year? Why are we going to be drafting Saquon Barkley? Because he's going to have like 400 touches. We go back to why they paid him. Howie Roseman told us at the time, well, because he's going to touch the ball 300 times. It turns out that was a very conservative estimate. It also helps that those guys are really good. But the primary point is they get the volume. Chasing volume is what I want to do as a fantasy manager. I want to grab guys who I know are going to have significant roles. Jaden Reed, I remember a couple of weeks ago against the Bears. He was in my in and out column as an out. He caught a touchdown like immediately. I'm going, oh, this is going to go well. Well, he ended up with 2 catches on the day. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has 6 touchdowns in the last 7 games. He's catching a touchdown every 5 targets. Like the norm is every 20 targets, right? So, like, is that something you can count on? Is that something you can play every week? It's something you can play every week and hope for that touchdown. Sam Laporte is turning into that guy. What do you have? 3 catches, 2 touchdowns? It's hard to, it's hard to bank on that. Mark Andrews' success this year has been touchdowns. It's the least sticky stat, right? So I get it with Jaden Reed. I mean, I did play him this week. And I think for the reason you said, you kind of look at some of those additional data points that can help you do that. But man, it can be dicey. It's the consistency is not there. That is a coin flip. So, like, I have Knicks ahead of Stroud in my rankings. I do, but I'm ahead of Stroud. I'm ahead of the rankings on Stroud, right? And again, I mentioned he's averaged 25 points in his career against the Jaguars. They've been horrible. All right. Knicks, it's a little tougher matchup, but he's been fantastic too. Like, I feel like this is the week that if you're not playing Stroud, when are you going to play him? But I also like something that Jeff Mans, my co-host on Sundays, talks about. Like, you have a depth chart, right, for these cases. Like, what if you have Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels? I have that combo in a lot of leagues. Like early in the year, I'm going, man, I gotta sit Jaden Daniels. He's having these huge games. Well, that's because I put Lamar in. I lock him in. He's the kind of player I lock in. I don't know if either of these guys are guys that you have to lock in right now. But in the ideal world, I mean, I would have Knicks as my starter every week because he's playing better. CJ Stroud is like turned into the Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's a very good NFL quarterback. They're playing well. He gets sacked more times than I'd like. But as a fantasy guy, what is he? Quarterback 15 on the season? It's not panning out the way we wanted. And he's had various points of time without Stephon Diggs currently, without Nico Collins for a period. So it's kind of a tough situation, right? So in this case, like, if I'm playing my depth chart, I'm playing Knicks. But this is a great matchup, and I don't know that those guys are at the Lamar Jackson level or Josh Allen level. Like, I have players ranked ahead of Josh Allen. I'd be hard pressed not to play Josh Allen, no matter what. I agree with this as well. It is probably part of the equation. Hi, if you're just tuning in, I'm Bob Harris. I'm going to answer some questions. We're going to discuss some things. I'm going to figure out a way to get my rankings in here probably next week. I should have thought of that in advance. I thought, like, here's a brilliant idea, and I just thought it would show up. When I post in YouTube my rankings, they don't show up because they think I'm spamming. So I'll get with Joey right on this and get this squared away in short order, people. But again, I am trying not to just sit here and read my rankings to you. I'm trying to discuss things a little deeper and maybe help some more people or further people than I'm able to help when I just sit here and answer a third of the questions or less every week. But I will answer some because I think it's helpful to it sets us up. There was one I saw here. So these are tough questions to me. Like these flex level questions with lower level players. I think like a lot of times, like there used to be a time when I had like what I call the first law of flexology, feature back over any wide receiver. That was old times. Now is not that time anymore. Now it's a narrower band of running backs I would play over receivers. Yes, I'm looking at you, Saquon Barkley, definitely playing him. But when we get down to this level of Gus Edwards, Atlanta, I mean, I think Gus Edwards is going to play the lead role. He hasn't been very dynamic, right? He came off the injury, came off the IR. First game back, he had 55 yards and 11 carries. It's a pretty good average, right? It was good. The 2 games since then, his per carry average has dipped down. I think, I'm going to say last game was under 3 yards. I don't know. It's been not good. But he gets great goal line opportunities. Jordan Addison has been coming on because teams are focused on shutting down Jordan Addison. At what point has Jordan Addison punished opposing defenses to the point where they have to dial back on their focus on Justin Jefferson and pay more attention to him? That's going to be a sticking point, right? They're going to do it. They're going to make that adjustment at some point. Why? Because the defensive guys watch film too. They're out there working hard. They see what's going on with Jordan Addison. So it's a little bit streaky. And this may be a situation, Paul, where you say, do I need upside or do I just need a floor? If I just need a floor, I'm playing Gus Edwards, right? Because he's going to be the starter. He has that potential to score. He's a goal line guy. Jordan Addison, more of a swing for the fence play to me, right? Especially against Arizona, it's a big swing for defense. And so if I play Brock Bowers or if I'm looking at my opponent's lineup and they got a lot of, you got Lamar Jackson level plays in there, Saquon Barkley's in their lineup, right? And you know you're going to need to score a ton of points. I would maybe be more open to considering Addison in that case and trying to give that a shot. So I hope that's helpful there. This is another kind of situation that I find like, I call it all the eggs in a basket problem, right? Like, so I'm okay putting all my eggs in one basket as long as it's a very good basket. Got Trey McBride going. No way you're sitting him. In a vacuum, would I start Marvin Harrison over Brian Thomas Jr.? I might this week. The football guys, rankers, and projectors disagree with that. They're all in on him. He had success against the Texans earlier this year. I don't know that they're the same defense they were earlier this year, and I don't know that Trevor Lawrence is the same quarterback he was earlier this year. We'll see. So in a vacuum, I would probably start Brian Thomas either way. But in this case, you've got 2 guys from one team and a perfectly capable guy on a second team. I would probably do it. I would probably split that up. So going back to the Buffalo situation, careful how you play your players in the Bills games. Andrea is in Buffalo area and understands what the weather's like. It's supposed to be really bad. So, and again, I've talked about this many, many times. I'll talk about it one more time here and probably many times after this. I'm generally injury agnostic, but also weather agnostic because football's been played in the winter forever and points get scored no matter what. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. So I'm like, I try to dial back on the weather, but like if I'm trying to decide between players that are fairly close in value, like am I going to play I don't know, Kirk Cousins over Josh Allen? No, the weather's not going to keep me from playing Josh Allen. If I have Khalil Shakir, let's say, Khalil Shakir and someone relatively close to him in value, I would be I would be more open to it, right? So that's kind of how we do it. Um, and they've done this before, I think, Andrea, right? Where they moved the game to Detroit if they had to, and they changed it. I think they changed the day they played it. I saw a comment up here. Is Kareem Hunt toast? I don't think he's toast, but he's certainly not as useful as he was. Like we went into this game yesterday, a lot of questions about how the workload would play out. There were all kinds of possible scenarios. Something you have to play out in your own mind. Like I told myself a story. You had to tell yourself a story. My story was, why would they push Isaiah Pacheco back? I thought it would be a split workload. But once you and it was, but once you watch the game, you can see Isaiah Pacheco is the more dynamic player, and he's going to be the guy going forward. So I don't know if Kareem Hunt is totally toast, but he's slightly toasty. Do I think Jonathan Brooks will do much this year? No, I don't think so. I think for the rest of this year, you're going to see kind of what we've seen. Like there may be a point where he gets more than what he got last week, which was like what, a handful of snaps, 5, 3, 2, something ridiculous like that. It's the Miles Sanders role for now. But I do think something we mentioned earlier in the program, where a lot of these teams are trying to replicate what's going on with the Detroit Lions. I think next year, Dave Kluge's talked about this as well. We see a Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery type backfield, or at least that's the desired effect. And maybe that'll be the effect too with in Arizona with James Conner and Trey Benson. Although, as we've discussed, they really like James Conner in that locker room. Get to some more questions here. Oh, that's interesting. Point per completion league and 6-point TDs. Russ versus Cincy, Cousins versus Chargers, and Kyler versus Vikings. Point per completion does make it a little more interesting. I probably like I like Russell Wilson. I would probably still play Kyler Murray in this one. Murray, probably then Cousins. I mean, tough matchup for Cousins. I want to say am I overplaying the AFC North isms there? Probably so, but I'm probably playing Kyler Murray there. Njoku and the Broncos or Henry versus the Colts. I'm leaning Henry as well. I didn't bring up the comment. You will find I missed the comment. There it is. So David Njoku is going to be my out of tight end. It's not as much about David Njoku, although the Broncos are very good against tight ends. Broncos are very good at against quarterbacks at home. Ask Kirk Cousins, who scored like 4 points against them last week, and you shut down the quarterback, you shut down the weapons. They're also very good against tight ends. Only 2 have scored, like I want to say, had big games, and it was Brock Bowers in the first game. Last week, Brock Bowers had 7 points against them. And Travis Kelce had a big game against them. Otherwise, tight ends have not hit double digits against them. So I'm dialed back on Njoku. I think Henry in that matchup is really good. Henry last week, like I think he hit like just under 10 points. And that's not been the norm with Drake May and like I think 4 or 6 games now. He's had double digit points. I'm playing that. And I also like Cade Otton this week. I think Cade Otton, like Taysom Hill. Let's discuss Taysom Hill. Because man, big game. He's capable of those explosive games. He's not going to get you 40 points many weeks. No player is, right? Saquon Barkley did last week. I mean, to put a little perspective, that's a lot of points, right? So I think if you're in a PPR league and you have a regular tight end, I'm probably more likely to play the regular tight end. In standard leagues, I'm 100% playing Taysom Hill almost every week, right? He's probably a top 5 guy in standard scoring because he gets high leverage opportunities in various ways, not just as a receiver, but as a runner, as a passer. So all those things matter. So I'm doing that. I like Cade Otton in a great matchup. It is. Last week, so here's what we need to decide. Is Mike Evans' return going to be a limiting factor? I want to say when Mike Evans was out, JJ Zacharyson put this number out in his data dump this week. It was like a 28% target share for Otton. That helped him be very successful, right? So um, last week it was like 15% with Evans back. Was that a momentary spike? Did it have something to do with the fact that Tampa Bay Buccaneers got out ahead early and then were running the ball and Bucky Irving was the star of the game? Maybe that too. So it is a great matchup. Before Evans' return in the games since I want to say since week 7, maybe a week before that, week 6, he was averaging almost 10 targets a game, almost 20 fantasy points a game. I'm probably thinking he's closer to that than what we saw against the Giants. Even if he's not that same guy, it's going to be up in the double digits scoring at tight end. I'm probably playing him over Hill. If I need a swing for the fence play, it's always Taysom Hill. I'm going to go back to this one more time just because I don't like the matchup for the passing attack for the Cleveland Browns, right? And there may be no Cedric Tillman, which could put more Pat Surtain focus on Jerry Judy. So like I think if it's Judy versus Bele, I mean Bele's been coming on strong. He's been putting up double-digit numbers. I think he's probably the safer play to me. But probably Judy still has more upside than Bele. I mean, it's a fair argument. He is getting his cardio in. So Jennings or Devonta Smith, full PPR, also Hill or Fox. So I want to talk about the Jennings thing because I think the weather, if it's going to be that bad, is a little bit of a concern. I do like Jauan Jennings. I'm a lot, right? Like just in general in this offense. I think he's the wide receiver one. We've seen in recent weeks Deebo Samuel with or without Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel's not fared well, right? Like it just seems like it's not clicking for him. It's not clicking for this offense in general. I have concerns about this offense in general. Trent Williams is out. It worries me for everyone, for Brock Purdy, for Christian McCaffrey. That's taking the best offensive lineman in the game off the field is not helpful, right? So I think, I think for me, I'm probably playing Jennings over Smith. I'm going to wait and see a little bit on the weather. And I like TJ Hawkins. And he had 28% target share this past week. I think that's going to close in to the norm for him, or be something closer to the norm for him. Not 28, but 20 or certainly higher. I think he's already up to 17% on the season. So, I mean, that tells you something just getting back. So probably playing Jennings over Smith, depending on what I hear about the weather on Sunday morning. That's tomorrow in other language. But yeah, so JSN over Malik Neighbors. That's interesting. JSN's had a tremendous 3-game run, right? Like 370 yards, 3 touchdowns. It's been a phenomenal run. Is it sustainable? I don't know. Seems to be heading in that direction though. JSN, but here's the concern for me. JSN is in an offense with DK Metcalf. Are there going to be games where DK Metcalf limits JSN? Probably so. Are there going to be games where Neighbors is limited? I don't think so. Not by the other receivers. By his quarterback situation, to a degree, probably more so than JSN, yes. That's going to be very close, Kevin. I might take that game by game, matchup by matchup, and depending on who's playing quarterback. But I don't think it's, I think it's entirely possible that JSN outperforms him by the time the year's done. And Taysom Hill, when you look at that dude, he's a horse, man. Super close. I like Henry slightly better, but I wouldn't fault anyone for taking him. Again, so here's a good chance to highlight what I'm talking about the rankings. Let me go bring up the projections and tell you the difference between these guys because I'm sure they're very close. Why am I sure? Because everybody's very close, but also they're very close. So on the raw projections, Ertz is ahead of Henry. Henry ahead of Ertz in my rankings. I've adjusted. But how close are they? Ertz is 10.9 points. Henry is 10.83 points. So here's a dirty little secret, people. We cannot predict the future with that level of granularity or accuracy. I don't want to shock anybody. I mean, this is how it works. We're working in a linear world, right? So these guys are in a tier to me. That's why so many people work with tiers. We live in a linear world where people want to have like this guy or that guy, right? Okay, well, we give you that, but we give you that knowing that there's a range of possible outcomes here. So either of these guys are perfectly playable. If you have a good feeling about one over the other, play the one you have the good feeling about. I've talked myself into the notion that Henry is a good play because it's a great matchup, because he's been very good with Drake May more often than not. And I'm going to play that. Ertz has been fine. I maybe have a little bit of negative connotation in my mind with Jaden Daniels and the Washington offense not exactly getting it done, but basically, I mean, he's been the wide receiver too on this team. Let me bring up the numbers here because I think it is interesting, and I want to verify if my thoughts are somewhat accurate. Sometimes I say stuff and I know that I need to check it. Zach Ertz is the second most. In this case, I was correct. So target shares 20% for Terry McLaurin, 18% for Zach Ertz, 15% for Noah Brown. Well, let's see what we've got in New England. Hunter Henry, 17% target share, number one on the team. Mario Douglas is next with 16%. Austin Hooper next with 10%. Or no, Austin Hooper is fourth. So both tight ends are in the top four. Keishawn Butte has 11%. Everyone else is in the single digits. So yeah, it's a little bigger role for Henry. I'm slightly leaning into that. But that's the point about the rankings. Like I can go through and it's like you sit here and I think when I'm doing questions fast, I just want to give you my rankings so to get to process through the questions. But there's way more to it than that, right? It's what's your situation? What do you feel about it? Or they're so close. Like again, these are your teams, right? Like these are not my teams. I tend to give a little safer advice when I'm talking here or on the radio. I'm trying to, but like I don't understand your risk tolerance levels. I mean, you can kind of, throw that out there. And a lot of times I mentioned the question earlier where basically the question was the answer. I don't really want to play these two guys. I have four guys and I don't want to play these two. Okay, well, let's talk about why and how realistic that is, right? So there's that. Yoshi and Vele, please hit the like button. I already mentioned him earlier. He has traditionally not, and I don't think he will be, right? But man, he is way more dynamic. What is it? 100 plus carries for Kareem Hunt, no 20-yard runs, 5 carries, and for Pacheco at a 20-yard run. Let's see what I can find here. LOL. That's funny. Interesting. So Baker Mayfield has been one starting Baker Mayfield over Josh Allen. So like earlier in the year when there was Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield was like what quarterback 2 over the first month plus of the season. He's fallen down a little bit now. Like I don't know that I'd have the nerve to do that, but that's not crazy. Not crazy. Baker's been good. Got Mike Evans back. He's got a great matchup this week. He is still ranked lower than Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen, one of the things we're playing here with Josh Allen, and as Andrea said, be mindful of the weather. We're playing the history. I mean, the guy's been quarterback 1 or 2 every single year, fantasy, every single year since his rookie year, right? Since his second season. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to say about Barkley, man. So, I'm looking beyond last week's 46-point game. He's averaging 24 fantasy points a game, 4 points ahead of this year's running back dude, Derrick Henry. Leverage over the field is what you're looking for. Just like in DFS, week to week fantasy, it's a positional battle, right? You have a player who dominates his position every single week. You're going to win more games. And so going this year, we're going to be looking, maybe a reordering of the number 1 overall. Are we going to chase Barkley? Probably so. Not because we're chasing what he's doing right now. We're chasing the role, right? I think it is interesting. As JJ's late round fantasy. Check out his Twitter. X will. Barkley has 30 plus points in 5 games. this year. Since 2011, only McCaffrey in 2019, who did it 8 times, Todd Gurley in 2018, who did it 7 times, and David Johnson in 2016 did it 6 times, have done that. I mean, he's playing at a historic level. Tom Borchek had some numbers too on points expected, fantasy points expected, or uh, fantasy points over expected per carry. And he is like, there's only 6 players in the history of the game have done better than he's doing this year. So, like, this is not like, am I playing Saquon Barkley this week? You're playing him every week. But it's about the volume, man. Volume is the key to success in all of this. Receivers, running backs, tight ends. Let's see what we have here. See that I'm worried about this too. I'm worried about this against Carolina, and we saw it last week against the Giants. We saw Bucky Irvin finish out strong, and the numbers weren't great, or as great as I hope for Mike Evans for sure. Also for Kate Otten, who had like a 4-point game. Very worried. Saquon is getting that. He's not alone with that. Derrick Henry's getting that too. Got just a couple minutes left here. Does PPR make a difference for quarterbacks? No, it does not. Points per completion does. Points per reception does not. Daniels or Josh Allen? I'm still playing Josh Allen. I'm playing it safe. I'm just saying. I think Josh Allen to me, but like if the weather is a concern for you, this is a case where you could say, wow, that if this is splitting a hair. Like it takes a lot to push me off Josh Allen. It takes a lot, and maybe I'll see the weather and I'm going, it's horrible when we get up tomorrow morning and we're going, man, that's miserable. Can't stand it. He can't play in that. Remember, though, the weather is not necessarily permanent either. What looks like early in the day is not always late in the day. Pay attention to the reports and figure it out. I mentioned this earlier about A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell, I think, is going to be working in the slot a little bit, maybe with Josh Downs' role. That might be beneficial. Here it was. Yes, I think so. Yes. And that's the other thing, like not everyone comes out of the chute super hot. Sometimes it takes these players a little time to develop. Give them that time, especially if you're in dynasty leagues. Don't panic. I mean, nobody's panicking on JSN, but there are other players. I'm probably playing JSN over McLaurin. McLaurin's a little dicier. There has to be a study on what's happened to Debo this year. He doesn't think he's playing poorly. It's not been great. I'm trying to remember the last week that he was a wide receiver 3. It's been a little while. All right, everybody. There you have it. There's the first edition of a Saturday Ask Me Anything. I did see a question about Thanksgiving. I should probably look for that because it was a non-football question that I thought was interesting. I got caught up in my stuff. My Thanksgivings are like very predictable. I work. Like when you sign up for this job, there's like half the year where you don't do a lot of things. And so, and like, it's kind of like, the expectation. I'll tell the paperboy story. When you're a kid growing up, your dad goes out to get his Sunday morning paper. It better be there. It's not there. He doesn't care what happened to the paperboy. The paperboy get run over. Who cares? Where's my paper? That's kind of what this business is like. So I take that approach anyway, to honor my dad, maybe. All right, that's it. Be sure to come back here Tuesday night for the On the Hot Seat. We'll talk waiver wire. I'll have a great guest. You'll love it. And again, I'll figure out how to do my rankings next week because I really do. If I'm not going to answer questions, I'd like you to be able to read my rankings so I don't have to read them to you. And they are free and available if I use the right link. So I'll get that sorted out then and figure it out. You can catch me tonight on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. We'll take a ton of calls. So if you want to call in there and get questions answered, please do. I'll appreciate you being there. Also Sunday, the pregame show, 11 to 1 p.m. I'll be there as well. The daily update podcasts are at 5:30 every morning. Be sure to catch that 10 minutes of just what you need. Fantasy Notebook Thursday, Polarizing Players with Gary Davenport on Friday, In and Out on Saturday. Tons of great content available to you at footballguys.com. I highly recommend you going there. I think the Black Friday sale is probably over, but if it's not, go check and see if you're not on there. What time tonight? 8 to 11 on Sirius XM Fantasy and NFL Radio. It's simulcast. Technological thing. So it's a 3-hour show tonight. Marcus Grant will be on with us. And so we appreciate you listening to that. Also, check out all the other good stuff at Football Guys. Cecil and Sigmund here on the Audible channel, Jagger and Jeff on the Dynasty channel, and Kluge and Alfredo on the Fantasy Football channel. Tons of good stuff. Hope you appreciate it all. I appreciate you coming here and giving me a little bit of time. And I will get the rankings sorted out so you can answer all your own questions. And again, apologies for not being able to do them all, but there's just more than I can do. So there we have it. This is what we're going to do instead. I hope you enjoyed it. See you later.